Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive.
Always exciting to dig into something new.
Yeah, and today we're looking at something that I think is really, really relevant to, well, everyone really, but especially younger generations.
It's definitely a topic that's on a lot of people's minds.
Yeah, we're going to be diving into why so many young people are turning away from traditional religions and exploring these new paths. And specifically, we're going to take a look at the Bahá'í Faith.
Okay.
You gave me some really interesting articles about this. And
yeah, these are fascinating. I think we'll find some good stuff in here.
yeah, they're full of good stuff. So get ready for some aha moments, folks.
I think you're right about that. Yeah. This is a really it's a complex topic, and there's a lot of interest in how the Baha'i Faith is responding to kind of the shifts that we're seeing in the world today.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's unpack this a little bit. One of the things that really jumped out at me in these articles is how disillusioned a lot of young people are feeling with traditional religions.
Right.
It's like this tension between science and religion.
Yeah.
And those like old school doctrines just aren't cutting it anymore for some people.
Yeah.
We have information at our fingertips, science is evolving, and it can feel like some of these beliefs are just stuck in the past.
Well, and you hit a key point there.
Yeah.
This generation has grown up with the ability to fact check anything instantly.
Right.
And so when they encounter beliefs that seem to clash with their understanding of science, it's only natural for them to start asking some questions and wanting to know, wanting something that aligns with how they understand the world.
Yeah, they're searching for something that feels more authentic.
Yeah.
Something that speaks to their desire for individual expression and freedom. And But here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
The Baha'i Faith, which is described as the latest revelation, right?
That's right, yeah.
Seems to be tackling this head on. And there was this quote from Abdu'l-Baha that just jumped out at me, where he was talking about science and religion being two wings to help human intelligence just soar.
Wow.
It's like saying you don't have to choose one or the other.
That's such a powerful metaphor.
Right.
Because it acknowledges that both scientific understanding and spiritual insight are crucial for us to really grasp the world that we live in, the complexity of reality.
Okay, so wait, are they saying that science and religion go hand in hand?
Yeah, I mean, that's really what they're saying.
That's fascinating. And then there's this idea of independent investigation of truth.
Yeah.
Which makes it sound like they're actually encouraging people to think for themselves.
Absolutely.
To question, to find their own path. Is that even possible?
It's one of the core principles of the Baha'i Faith.
Within a religious framework.
They really emphasize that blind faith isn't enough.
Okay.
They encourage individuals to look into spiritual truths and to question assumptions and to really try to understand their own personal relationship with the Creator.
So that's so different from what we hear about religion usually, right? It's always about just following rules and doctrines. But how does this independent investigation thing actually work in practice? I mean, does everyone just come up with their own version of the truth?
Well, I mean, the Baha'i teachings do provide a framework, a set of principles and guidelines, but they really do emphasize this personal understanding and application of those principles.
Okay.
And they talk about truth as a multifaceted gem.
Interesting.
And that each of us has the capacity to kind of uncover different parts of that truth through our own unique experiences and perspectives.
So it's not about everybody agreeing on every single thing, but it's about this shared commitment to searching for truth.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
And understanding. And I can see how that resonates with young people who are constantly being told to think critically and challenge the status quo.
Exactly. And speaking of challenging the status quo, the articles you sent also talk about how the Baha'i Faith aligns with a lot of the values that we see that are important to young people today.
Right.
Things like racial unity, gender equality, economic justice. It's not just about personal piety, it's about actively working towards a better world.
Yeah, there's that global governing body that they have,
the Universal House of Justice.
Yeah, the Universal House of Justice.
Yeah.
That's actually working to implement these principles in a practical way.
Right. That's a really distinctive feature.
Yeah, it's not just talk, it's actually walking the walk.
Exactly.
But how does this idea of global unity actually play into this?
That's where things get really interesting. I think the Baha'i teachings put a huge emphasis on the oneness of humanity.
Okay.
It's this idea of seeing all of us as one global family, interconnected and interdependent.
Right.
And this really resonates with young people who already are experiencing the world in this globalized way.
Yeah.
You know, through social media, through the internet, through their diverse friendships.
They're already living it.
They're living it.
Yeah.
And so the Baha'i Faith is offering this spiritual framework that, in a way, validates that experience.
Yeah. But let's be honest, the idea of embracing any kind of faith can feel kind of contradictory to this whole freedom thing that young people are looking for.
Absolutely.
A lot of them see religion as restrictive.
Right.
So how does that work?
Well, I mean, it raises the question of what true freedom actually is.
Right.
You know, is it just the absence of all constraints? Or is there more to it?
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So the Baha'i teachings suggest that actually rejecting all structure and external guidance doesn't necessarily lead to true freedom.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can lead to a sense of emptiness, a lack of direction, just kind of drifting without purpose. So they believe that true freedom actually comes from aligning ourselves with a higher purpose.
So not about doing whatever you want, but about finding a framework that helps you live a more meaningful life.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Okay.
It's this idea that true freedom comes not from resisting limitations, but from understanding.
Okay.
And choosing to live in accordance with principles that help us move towards our potential.
Wait a minute. So are you saying that true freedom actually involves, like, submitting to a set of commandments?
Well, that's a question that a lot of people have.
Yeah.
It's something that the Baha'i writings really explore in depth.
Okay.
But before we jump into that, I think it's worth taking a moment to look at how this idea of aligning ourselves with spiritual principles might actually play out in the lives of young people today.
Yeah, let's explore that.
We'll come back to that question of freedom and submission a little bit later.
Sounds good to me.
So we were talking about how the Baha'i Faith frames freedom as aligning yourself with a higher purpose.
Right, yeah. It kind of goes against everything we hear these days, but the more we unpack it, the more it makes sense in a way.
Yeah.
It's like instead of rebelling against something, you're choosing to move with something, something bigger than yourself.
Yeah, and that gets at the idea of finding fulfillment through service, through working to make the world a better place.
That's really interesting because even outside of religion, we see so many young people gravitating towards service.
Absolutely.
And wanting to make a difference.
Yeah.
They're passionate about social justice, climate change, all these things.
Yeah.
It's like they're searching for that connection to something bigger than themselves.
Exactly. And the Baha'i Faith offers that framework for channeling that passion and giving it direction.
Okay, so how does that actually look in practice? What makes the Baha'i approach to service different?
Well, one thing that they emphasize is consultation.
Okay.
Making decisions collectively through dialogue and collaboration.
Okay.
It's about seeking unity rather than imposing one person's will over another.
That's pretty different from how we see things run, in a lot of institutions.
It is.
It's refreshing to hear about a faith that actually values everybody's voice.
And it reflects the Baha'i belief in the inherent worth of every single person.
Okay.
That everyone has something valuable to contribute, and that the best solutions come from listening to each other.
Yeah, it's like they're taking the best of what we admire about teamwork and applying it to spirituality and social action.
Yeah, I like that, yeah.
It feels like we could use a lot more of that collaborative spirit in the world right now.
I agree. In a world that's increasingly polarized, the Baha'i teachings offer a vision of unity, where we see ourselves as one interconnected family.
It's a beautiful thought, but I have to ask, how do they deal with disagreements?
Right.
Surely not everyone agrees on everything all the time.
Yeah, you're right. Disagreements are inevitable.
Yeah.
But they see them as opportunities for growth, for learning. They believe that through respectful dialogue and a sincere desire to understand, we can bridge differences and arrive at solutions that benefit everyone.
So it's not about winning the argument, it's about finding common ground.
Right, exactly.
And moving forward. Okay, so back to young people for a sec.
Okay.
If someone is curious about the Baha'i Faith, where do they even start?
Yeah.
It's not like there's a Baha'i church on every corner.
That's true.
But there are Baha'i centers and communities in most major cities around the world.
Okay.
And even if there isn't one nearby, they have a great website and social media presence.
So they're embracing the digital world.
Yeah, which makes sense, given how connected this generation is.
Would you say that the Bahá'í Faith is modern?
That's an interesting question.
Yeah.
I mean, the Baha'i Faith is relatively new.
Okay.
Founded in the 19th century. But it emphasizes this idea of ongoing revelation.
Okay.
Meaning, truth is something that unfolds over time.
So they are constantly adapting and evolving to the needs of the time.
So they're not clinging to outdated beliefs.
No.
They're actually using technology and modern tools to connect with people.
That's right.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And that speaks to their value of education, too.
Absolutely. They see education as a lifelong process of learning and growth.
Not just acquiring knowledge, but developing our ability to contribute to society.
Exactly.
And how does that emphasis on education play out specifically for young people?
Well, for young people who are facing, this rapidly changing job market, uncertainty about the future, education can be a powerful tool.
Right.
The Baha'i Faith encourages them to develop a strong work ethic, to pursue excellence in their chosen fields.
So it's not just about getting a degree or landing a high-paying job.
Right.
It's about using your skills and talents to make a positive impact.
Exactly. It goes back to aligning our actions with a higher purpose.
Okay.
They teach that every act of service, no matter how small,
contributes to a better world.
But let's be honest, not everything is sunshine and roses.
Right.
Every belief system has its critics.
Of course.
What are some of the challenges or criticisms that the Baha'i Faith faces?
Well, one of the biggest hurdles, honestly, is awareness.
Okay.
It's still relatively new on the world stage.
Right.
A lot of people haven't even heard of it.
I can imagine there's some misconceptions out there.
Oh, yeah.
People hear new religion and they might jump to conclusions or, lump it in with other groups.
Yeah, and sometimes people mistake it for a sect of another religion, when it's actually an independent world religion.
Okay, so it's about getting the word out, sharing the story, letting people decide for themselves.
Exactly. And that's where the digital world comes in.
Right.
Websites, social media, podcasts like this one.
Yeah.
These are platforms for sharing information and inviting people to learn.
It's all about meeting people where they are and sparking those conversations.
Yeah, about meaning and purpose. Speaking of which, earlier we were talking about that idea of true freedom.
Yeah.
As aligning ourselves with a higher purpose through, submission to commandments.
Right.
I'm still kind of struggling with that one.
Oh.
It seems counterintuitive.
It's definitely a question that deserves a deeper dive.
Okay, yeah, let's explore that further. Okay, so we're back and ready to really dig into this idea of submission to commandments leading to true freedom.
It definitely goes against how we usually think about things.
Yeah, it's a real head scratcher.
It is, but if we kind of shift our perspective a little bit,
yeah.
What if freedom isn't just about doing whatever we want, whenever we want, but about aligning ourselves with a set of principles that can help us live a more purposeful and meaningful life?
So like choosing to follow a roadmap instead of just wandering aimlessly.
Exactly.
Okay.
Think about it this way. Learning to play a musical instrument.
Okay.
At first, you have to follow all the rules, right?
Yeah.
Practice the scales, learn the techniques, and it might feel kind of restrictive in the beginning.
Right.
But it's those limitations that eventually allow you to really express yourself.
Wow, I never thought about it like that.
Freely through music.
So the commandments, in this case, would be like the musical scales.
That's a great analogy.
Providing the framework for us to develop our spiritual potential.
Yeah, and just like musical scales, these spiritual principles that we find in the Baha'i writings are designed to help us grow, develop our character, refine our understanding, and live a more meaningful life.
So it's not about blind obedience. It's about choosing to live in accordance with principles that help us be our best selves.
Exactly. And the Baha'i teachings really emphasize that these principles aren't just arbitrary rules. They come from a deeper understanding of human nature and how everything is interconnected.
So by aligning ourselves with these principles, we're tapping into something bigger than ourselves.
You got it.
Something that connects us to a higher purpose.
It's like we're tuning ourselves to a universal frequency, and it can lead to greater peace and fulfillment and even freedom.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's like those principles are a compass leading us to a life of meaning. But how does this play out in the lives of young people who are trying to figure out this crazy world?
Well, think about all the challenges they're facing. Social pressures, academic stress, uncertainty about the future, the constant flood of information online. The Baha'i Faith provides them with a set of values and practices that can help them navigate all of that.
So it's not just a set of beliefs, but a practical guide to living a meaningful life.
Yeah, exactly. For example, they emphasize service, which encourages young people to use their energy to make a positive difference.
Right.
And their principle of consultation helps them learn to work together to bridge those differences.
So it's about both personal and societal growth.
Exactly.
It's amazing how these principles align with so many of the values that we see in young people today.
It is, isn't it?
This has been such a fascinating deep dive.
It has.
We've explored why young people are looking for new spiritual paths.
Right.
The core principles of the Baha'i Faith. And even how this idea of submission can actually lead to greater freedom.
Yeah, and what I find really remarkable is how all of this resonates with the values we see emerging in young people today. That desire for authenticity, the commitment to social justice, that yearning for connection and meaning, and that understanding that we're all part of one big family.
As we wrap up, what's the one thing you hope our listener takes away from this?
If you're feeling lost or disillusioned, don't be afraid to explore. The Baha'i Faith, with its focus on unity, reason, and service, offers a really powerful framework for spiritual and social transformation.
Right. It invites us to think for ourselves, to engage with the world around us, and to contribute to a better future for everyone.
That's beautifully put.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive, everyone. Until next time.